Okay, good day students and welcome to Starry Academy. Today let's examine enterprise risk management (ERM). It happens to be a very core topic. When we are looking at how we can actually control risk. As we all know that risk is inevitable in a business. First of all, let's talk about risk. Let's refresh our memory about what we mean about the risk. When we talk about risk, it is any event or action that will actually lead to failure in achieving a company's strategic objective, and it will actually in turn add value to stakeholders. When we are actually trying to control risk from the angle of the enterprise risk management, we are trying to see a method or a framework that actually adds value to the shareholders. And when we are looking at this particular approach to risk management, we should actually start with understanding how our stakeholder measures value. That's the first thing. But I think we are going to dive better into this as we move on. But basically, we are trying to look at some particular framework that we can use to manage risk. I think we have spoken about the TARAS framework, looking at how we can actually transfer, avoid, reduce, or probably accept risk based on our risk appetite. But today, we'll be looking at enterprise risk management. What do we mean by enterprise risk management? ERM can be defined as the process effected by an entity's board of directors, management. Can you see those that actually affect it? The directors, the board of directors, the management, and other personnel applied in strategy setting and across the enterprise, designed to identify potential events that may affect the entity, that's the risk, and manage risk to be within its risk appetite to provide reasonable assurance regarding the achievement of the entity's objective. More like we are just trying to identify those things that are going to stop us from achieving our strategic objective. Then we look at how we can manage it based on our risk appetite. Then we actually look for ways in which we can actually control them so that it can give us a reasonable assurance that we will be able to achieve our strategic objective. And this particular definition is as per the integrated framework of the Committee of Sponsoring Organization, that's the COSO 2004, how they defined enterprise risk management. We have the enterprise risk management framework as given by the COSO, and the underlying principle of the ERM, that is the key underlying principles of ERM, includes: one, we have the consideration. We are going to look at this anyway. The consideration in the context of business strategy. Then we also look at it's everyone's responsibility. It is the everyone's responsibility to actually manage risk, with the tone set from the above, a focus on strategy led by the board, active management of risk, a creation of risk awareness culture, a comprehensive and holistic approach to risk management. Then we also have consideration of a broad range of risks. We are trying to identify those various risks that are affecting the organization. The strategic, we have the financial, the operational, compliance, we have even the technological, health and safety. I know we have actually done all this. Then we look at lastly the implementation through a risk management framework or system. And this particular framework is such we are actually looking at here that the ERM, the enterprise risk management. Now we have a particular framework for risk management, and it can be actually applied at 3 levels or at 3 stages. Number 1, we have to establish the approach. We have to establish the approach. When we say we are establishing the approach, we are looking at the risk management and also creating a risk management vision. Number 2, we are trying to commit resources. Then number 3, we are looking at implementation. When we are trying to commit resources, we are looking at risk management and ensuring that the necessary infrastructures for risk management are actually put in place and that the company or the group has the skills and capability that it needs to actually manage those risks. That's what we are talking about as regards the commitment to commit resources. Then lastly, we are talking about the implementation. systems. What are the implementation systems in place? That is the risk assessment, the application of controls and other risk management systems, and we look at also monitoring. We cannot put implementation in place without monitoring those particular systems that we have put in place to check, are they performing effectively, and are they going according to the way we have actually projected them. So that's what we are talking about, the monitoring risk and also the effectiveness of the risk management system or the arrangement. So we have a particular structure, a diagram that we use to actually show this. We'll draw it together and then analyze them together. I said that we also speak about, we take it from the stakeholder. Firstly is the stakeholder value, how the stakeholders talk about value. Then we move directly to the stage one. The stage one talking about the risk management approach. The stage one, let's put inside a box just to make it look more befitting. So this is stage one. That is the establishing the approach. So while we're establishing the approach, we can talk about the risk management vision. The vision. Risk management vision. And we also have under this vision, we have the strategy, the goals, the objectives. We have the culture, we have the strategy. We also have the you can call it, that we call it strategy, that we call objective or goals. And we also have the culture or the language. Culture. We have common framework. I'm going to explain every bit of this. Common framework. Now we move down to the next thing here, which is the stage 2. Let's go to our next page. Stage 2. Okay, let me see. This stage 2 is in 2 parts. You have it here, one here. Then we have the second also here. So this is stage 2, which is about committing resources. Committing resources. Under committing resources, we have the risk infrastructure, and we also have the risk capability. What are the risk infrastructure that we need to put in place? Risk infrastructure. Then we have the risk capability. The risk capability. Now, under the risk infrastructure, the first thing to consider is the leadership, the risk management leadership and support. Call it the RM leadership. I'm going to explain every of this as we move on. We have the policies and the procedures. Policies, or we can call it procedures. I decided to just use one. Then we have the specialist functions. Then under the risk capability, we have the personal objective or plans. Then 2, we have the training, or we can also call it education. Then lastly, we have the early early learning routine system. We have the early learning system. Then let's go to the stage 3. Stage 3 is also in 3 parts. Then this is called implementation. Stage 3, implementation. Under the risk, we have the risk assessment. We have the risk treatment. And lastly, we have the monitoring, the risk monitoring. So under this, we have the control self-assessment, control self-assessment. Alright, then we have the performance as the KPIs, key performance indicators, the performance. Then here we have the reporting routine. Then under the risk treatment, the first thing to consider is the control design. Then we have the control effectiveness. And we have lastly the residual risk. And under the risk assessment, we have the risk identification. I know we are familiar with this. Risk identification. We also have the risk profiling or measurement. So lastly, we have the ownership, or we call it accountability. Ownership. Now let's go pick it from the first one, talking about the approach to risk. When we talk about approach to risk, which is the approach to risk, we have things that we have to talk about. Is we are looking at the company as a whole. We are actually saying that the company should have a clear risk strategy. This is it. Since we want to know what's our vision as regards to risk management and looking at our approach to risk management, we have to have a risk strategy embedded in the company, or we should have a risk strategy that is defined and it's actually communicated throughout the organization. What's our strategy on risk? Then we have to have a culture of risk that is consistent, defined, and it should be in use throughout the company, and it should be providing appropriate and simple terminologies to support the risk management process. What is our culture as regards risk? What is the way we see risk in the organization? Are we together? Then that will define how our approach is to risk management. Then next one is the common framework. When we talk about the common framework, we are looking at the approach to risk across the entire company or the group. That's our framework. How do we approach risk? How do we manage risk in the whole organization? So let's move to the next stage, which is committing resources. When we are looking at committing resources, we consider the risk infrastructure firstly. When we are talking about risk infrastructure, we are just saying that there should be a risk management structure that provides leadership and support in all areas of risk and internal control. Who is in charge of this particular risk management control? Is there someone in place? Is there a risk management structure talking about the leadership? Then there should also be adequate and appropriate risk management policies and procedure, and this should actually be kept up to date because we know the dynamic nature of risk. It should be kept up to date and should be readily available as at when needed. Now we also speak about the specialist function. There should be appropriate specialist for risk management, and assurance function should be established where appropriate, such as the capability in internal audit, health and safety management. You can also speak about the IT assurance, insurance management, and many other. We can also have the environmental risk management function. There should be specialists in all areas as regards risk, because of risk are not actually general in an organization. So we have different types of risk. In every areas of that risk, there should be specialists. We have different specialized areas or those particular functions for actually we should construct that particular risk infrastructure in place. Now let's talk about the risk capability. Looking at the risk capability, the company should have the capability for managing risk. We should ask ourselves, okay, what's the resources? Talking about the resources that we commit, when we actually committing resources, it actually has to do with our capability for managing risk also. Do we have the employee? Are employees being given structured training in basic risk management procedures and internal control systems? Those are the questions to ask. Do we have individuals having personal objectives that make reference to their performance in areas of risk and control? Then lastly, talking about the system, Is the system capable of providing early warning? Sorry, I said early learning here. That's early warning. This is early warning. Is the system providing early warning reference to their performance in areas more like the system performing early warning of any major control breakdown or problem? When a problem is coming in play, is there early warning in the system that, oh, this thing that we are actually doing is going to result in this particular risk, and the impact will actually be so and all. So let's move to the next stage, which is the third stage. That's the risk implementation. That's the implementation. We have to consider this across three stages, three levels: the risk assessment, we have the risk treatment, and lastly the monitoring. When we are looking at the risk assessment, we are talking about how we should identify risk. Oh, this is the risk that we are actually facing in this organization. Then we profile them, more like risk mapping. We are mapping them just to know, okay, this is the category that it falls, this is how it is, this is the particular risk that is being faced by us. We are measuring their impact, their probability, or their impact. We are trying to map those particular risks. That's what we are actually doing here. Then lastly, talking about ownership, and all critical risks should be owned and designated by designated managers. Yeah, who is the manager responsible for this particular risk, control of this particular risk, and implementation of this particular risk or risk assessment. So that's what we're actually talking about. Let's go to risk treatment. Talking about risk treatment, we have the control designs. Control should be designed to actually mitigate against risk. There should be necessary controls in place to actually mitigate against risk. Then talking about the effectiveness of controls, there should be a proper effective control. The effectiveness of the control in reducing critical risks should be actually tested. Yeah, we should test those particular effectiveness of the control in reducing critical risks. Then lastly, talking about the residual risks, that's the risk that could not be managed or controlled, and as such they are still present in the organization. So as such, this particular residual risk, we should look for a way, talking about the treatment of them, they should be actually managed properly to an acceptable limits. They should be properly managed. Now talking about the monitoring, which is the last stage in the implementation, risk should be monitored by managers who have the responsibility for those particular risks, and in addition, risk can be monitored at a more senior level through the key performance indicators or the key risk indicators, as the KRI or the KPIs. Then you should know that the board should be provided regularly. The board should be provided regularly by management with clear reports. Yeah, you should actually report to them regularly that this is how we have been able to assess our risk. This is able to implement the risk assessed procedures that we have put in place to manage the risk. Now, there should be actually clear reports on risk management and internal controls, such as the company's risk profile, such as the control testing, the result of those tests, and actions plans, the action plans resulting from the test findings. Okay, I think these are all what we need to know as regards the risk management, the enterprise risk management. Thank you, and it's a bye for now.